For Samoa at international level. Here's Joe Marchant. Nice quick hands to Stewart and Tuolangi. He's got Chesham with him, two Leicester teammates. And Ollie Chesham.
England are probably the most interesting team going into the Six Nations this year. There is both an air of optimism and pessimism at the same time, despite them having a great World Cup campaign. They were in an absolutely terrible position before the World Cup when Borthwick took over, and they had some of the worst performances in the country's history. The turnaround that they made to reach the semi-finals and to push the Springboks in the way that they did should be commended. So, let's look at what this team is building from a tactical perspective and where they could be going next. The main idea that this team is built around is territorial advantage. They want to push teams back as much as possible, whenever possible. It's a very safe strategy with a low amount of risks. This means that it's quite unlikely for this team to receive a blowout because they focus on positions where they can control the game better. If it's done well. Let's not talk about this one. England will very rarely run the ball from deep. Whenever they find themselves around their own 22, they'll immediately go into an exit strategy with a box kick. England's box kicks require a high amount of technical skill to pull off. They try to kick the ball very close to the touchline and with a good amount of height. The reason for this is because it will allow their chasers a clearer path to chase outside of the touchline. This, in combination with good height, allows them to put a huge amount of pressure on their opposition. What helps is that England have wingers that are quite experienced and can compete well in the air, causing disruptions. Another kicking tactic that they use is the bomb. They don't necessarily focus solely on the crossfield bomb, which has become so popular recently, but they do use it on occasion. Their first receiver will put the kick high into space. They aren't afraid to send the ball into their opponent's 22 though, but when they do, it's sent to the side of the field, which will give them a harder clearing angle. England don't really care that much about the ball in playtime. Their goal isn't to orchestrate an amazing attacking opportunity through pressure. Rather, it's to put pressure on their opponents on a strategic level and to force poor decision making. So, they don't really care that much if their opponents slow the game down with a mark call. While I do think that we will continue to see this focus on territory, I also think that Borthwick will want to add more layers and complexity to this project this year. So, let's look at what they are busy building on attack. England use a 1-3-3-1 structure on attack, and they tend to position their pods in a compact manner, allowing good support lines and forcing their opponents to confront them in a physical manner. As we can see, their players stay quite close to the ball carrier, and they are more hesitant to give offloads. We'll get to their defense in a bit, but I also think it's important to highlight that they aren't only one-dimensional. They're also quite willing to spread the ball wide from turnovers. I do think this approach needs a bit of work, however. There were multiple instances where England had try-scoring opportunities from turnovers that they just couldn't capitalize on. It's important to note that they don't really like counter-attacking from the backfield. Their back three will usually send the ball back to gain territory instead of risking a turnover. England's defensive mindset is to keep the game tight as well. They will tackle low and hard to get the ball to ground quickly, and then they will compete heavily at the breakdown to slow down opposition ball, or, ideally, to win a turnover. They will also use a sort of seeking player on defense who will try to hunt down the ball carriers in the backline, preventing wide distribution. Typically, this will be one of their faster loose forwards. This system is not too dissimilar to the one that South Africa uses, where Peter Steph du Toit or Franco Mostert will gun down after the first receiver on attack. This system does come with a few drawbacks, however. Because they compete so heavily on the ground, it means that they don't have as many players on their feet in a lot of situations. Their defense needs to adjust inward to prevent any weak connections from forming against players. This leads them to having less defensive resources on the outside of the field, leaving them exposed to cross kicks, for example. This will be especially concerning against France, who are far and away the best team in the world at exploiting these types of weaknesses. Another weakness is that teams that do have amazing distributors of the ball can attack from deeper, and unless England are careful, exploit the space. A team like Ireland, who are absolutely incredible at engineering and targeting holes in the midfield, could potentially create many problems for England. Another area that could potentially cause problems is the set piece. While England are terrible in this area, they aren't exactly solid either. England's scrum success rate tends to hover around the high 70s, and their lineouts around the mid 80s. These stats aren't great, but they could be possible if they made up for it in other areas. But remember, England wants structured play and to control the game. There are no other periods in a rugby match with as much chaos as a set-piece turnover. While I know there is uncertainty to this English side, I genuinely believe that England fans have something to be hopeful for. It might not happen this year, but I do feel that they will start to string together solid performances pretty soon. If you like this video, then you can check out my previews of Ireland and France respectively. And if you'd like to see more, then please consider liking and subscribing. See you next time.